Hello, and welcome back to my channel, Civil War Reports. I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak. And in episode 24 of this channel, we took a look at the actions and the decisions made by Generals Pettigrew, Heath, and Hill on June 30th, 1863. And today we're going to be taking a look at the actions and decisions made by General John Buford and his cavalry on that same day, the day before the Battle of Gettysburg. So, what can we say about General John Buford briefly? Well, he was born on March 4th, 1826 in Kentucky, and he grew up in Versailles, Kentucky, in Woodford County, and he grew up around horses, and at a very young age, he displayed excellent equestrian skills. He also became a crack shot with a musket. And despite being born in a border state to a father who was an old Southerner, he definitely had more northern feelings. He was drawn more towards the north than to the south. And that could possibly be because at age 10, his family moved from Kentucky to Illinois. He did attend West Point, and he graduated in the class of 1848. During the Second Manassas campaign, Buford's brigade was assigned to hold Thoroughfare Gap in an effort to try to prevent General Longstreet's wing from hooking up and connecting with General Jackson's wing. During the battle, General Buford sent many detailed messages on to Army headquarters. However, the Army commander, General John Pope, ignored pretty much every dispatch sent by General Buford, and it would prove extremely costly to the Union cause at Second Manassas. The Battle of Chancellorsville took place in early May 1863, and for the Union it was yet another costly defeat. However, about a month after that battle took place, General Buford would be promoted to that of division commander, and it would be that division that he would lead to Gettysburg. So on June 29th, 1863, Buford's division would cross the Mason-Dixon line into Pennsylvania, and that evening would camp near modern-day Fountaindale, Pennsylvania. Buford noted that as he arrived into Pennsylvania, he was greeted enthusiastically by people who were very glad to see the blue-cladded troopers come and provide them some sort of protection, although his opinion would change somewhat about those civilians in a couple of hours on the morning of June 30th. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But that evening, General Buford, well, let one of his officers know what he thought about what was going to happen in the days to come. On the night of June 29th, Buford had this to say to one of his officers, and I quote, "Within 48 hours, the concentration of both armies will take place on a field within view, and a great battle will be fought." Very rarely have more truer words ever been spoken. General Buford's plan for June 30th was to wake up and get on the road early and start scouting to try to find where the Confederates were. And his plan was to come to here, Fairfield, just a few miles west of Gettysburg, ride through Fairfield, and then head on to the town of Gettysburg. However, when he arrived here at Fairfield, it was a misty, foggy morning, and he pretty much rode right into the picket line of the 2nd Mississippi. And as a result, not wanting to bring on a general engagement, but really just doing reconnaissance to try to find where the Confederates were, he then turned around and went back to Emmitsburg, Maryland. And what did General Buford have to say about the townspeople of Fairfield as a result of this near disastrous encounter? Well, he had this to say, quote, "The inhabitants knew of my arrival and the position of the enemy camp. Yet not one of them gave me a particle of information. The whole community seemed stampeded and afraid to speak out after offering excessive excuses like, quote, "The rebels will destroy our house if we tell anything," end quote. Had any of them given me timely information and acted as a guide that night, I could have surprised and captured this rebel force. So after his brief encounter with the 2nd Mississippi, at 5:30 in the morning, General John Buford sent dispatches to both General Pleasonton, who was commander of the Cavalry Corps, and to General John Reynolds, who was not only the 1st Corps commander, but also the left wing commander of the Army of the Potomac. And that wing consisted of his own 1st, the 3rd, and the 11th Corps of Infantry. And Buford then doubled back and returned here to Emmitsburg, Maryland. And while no documentation exists that he actually met with John Reynolds that day, Buford, the professional soldier that he was, I would find it very hard to believe that he would return to Emmitsburg, where Reynolds had his headquarters established that day, and not have personally told him what he encountered in Fairfield. He then put his troops in motion and continued on the 10-mile ride to Gettysburg. As General Buford approached Gettysburg, he came in on the Emmitsburg Road. And as he was riding up the Emmitsburg Road towards Gettysburg, he could not help but notice some of the very valuable high ground. Valuable in terms of military value. And the places he would have seen as he's coming into Gettysburg would have been Little Round Top and behind me, Cemetery Hill. Now, while General Buford did not know what Lee's intentions were, Buford's professional training did tell him that if Lee was able to occupy those high grounds, that it would be a real hard time for the Union Army to dislodge him. And it is that high ground that General Buford intended to protect when he set up his defensive position west and north of Gettysburg on the night of June 30th. The first of Buford's men to enter Gettysburg were scouts from the 3rd Indiana and 8th Illinois Cavalry. And they came up the Emmitsburg Road, as I mentioned. Then they turned left and headed north on Washington Street, went up to the Chambersburg Pike and turned west out towards the Lutheran Seminary. The 3rd Indiana and 8th Illinois were part of Colonel Gamble's brigade, approximately 1,600 troopers strong, and they entered the town around noon. I'm sitting in front of what was the Gettysburg Academy, essentially a finishing school for young ladies during the time of the Gettysburg campaign. And I would just like to read you a quote from the book At Gettysburg, or What a Girl Saw and Heard of the Battle by Tilly Pierce. She was about 15 at the time of the battle, and she was a student here at the Academy, and it is located at the intersection of High Street and Washington Street. And this is what she had to say about the arrival of Buford's men. They were Union soldiers, and that was enough for me, for I knew we had protection, and I felt they were our dearest friends. I afterwards learned that these men were Buford's cavalry, numbering about 6,000 men. She was a little off on that figure. A crowd of us girls were standing on the corner of Washington and High Street as these soldiers passed by, desiring to encourage them who, as we were told, would before long be in battle. My sister started to sing the old war song, Our Union Forever. As some of us did not know the whole of the piece, we kept repeating the chorus. Just things that these young civilians did to encourage the Union Army. As I mentioned in episode 24, on June 30th, General Pettigrew of Heath's division of Hill's Corps of the Confederate States of America was heading towards Gettysburg in an effort to obtain some supplies. It was on that afternoon that General Pettigrew encountered General Buford's men just west of the town near McPherson's Ridge. General Buford established his headquarters at the Eagle Hotel, which is in the area I'm standing at now, at the corner of the Chambersburg Pike and Washington Street. What stands there now is a 7-Eleven. But General Buford wasted no time taking control of the situation. He declared martial law here in the town. He actually had one suspected spy jailed. He forbid the selling of alcohol to any of his troopers. And he also had the local newspapers to print up flyers announcing these needed military actions. Again, he wasted no time. He sent out pickets out west and to the north. He wanted as much information as possible as he could to send back to his commanders. As I previously mentioned, General Buford was noted for sending very detailed messages to his superior officers throughout the war, and June 30th proved to be no different. At 10:30 at night on June 30th, General Buford sent messages to both General Reynolds and to General Pleasonton, informing him that the enemy pickets were within 4 miles of Gettysburg. He also sent a separate note to General Pleasonton informing him that Buford's pickets could see, they were within eyeshot of Confederate pickets. There's no doubt about it that there was going to be a major engagement on July 1st. And behind me is the monument for General Reynolds here at the Gettysburg battlefield. Now, Buford made no illusions that there was no way that his cavalry division was going to hold off whatever the Confederates were going to throw at him on July 1st. He intended only to slow them down, hold them off, keep them out of Gettysburg, keep them away from the high ground, keep them as far away from Gettysburg as possible to allow General Reynolds to bring up the First Corps, if not the entire left wing of the Union Army. However, one of General Buford's brigade commanders, Colonel Devon, thought differently and thought that they could hold the Confederates off for however long they needed to. But Buford disagreed, and Buford was quoted as saying, and somewhat with a harsh tone in his voice, he said this to his colonel, Colonel Devon, "No, you won't," he declared, in what turned out to be a remarkably accurate prediction. Quote, "They will attack you in the morning, and they will come booming. Skirmishers 3 deep. You'll have to fight like the devil to hold your own until supports arrive. The enemy must know the importance of this position and will strain every nerve to secure it. And if we are able to hold it, we will do well." End quote. For Civil War Reports, I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak. Until next time, thank you for watching. And if you would like to read up more on this topic, here are the main sources I used to bring this episode to you. And if you like what you saw today, please hit the subscribe button. Give a thumbs up. Also, notify your friends. Let them know about this channel and ask them to subscribe as well. If you like, you may leave a question or a comment below, and perhaps I will answer your question in a future episode of Civil War Reports. Until next time, please keep the history alive.